This is the Art Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the Amazon best-selling book, Make More Money Selling Your Art. In the Marketing Minute, we answer your questions to help your art career. Brought to you by artmarketing.com, the place to go to learn more about marketing. Now, here's your host, Art Magazine publisher, Eric Rhoads.
Thank you, Jim Kipping, and thank you for joining us today. I am here. My goal is to eliminate the idea of the starving artist. So let's get right to today's questions. A question from Aaron in Chicago. By the way, Chicago has an excellent plein air painters group. Say hi to everybody there. Hi, everybody in Chicago. Aaron says, what's the best way for me to know my buyer? You talked about it in one of your webinars, but how does that help me sell my art, and how do I get to know them? Well, Aaron, there's a marketing foundational principle. Foundational principles are big. And this one says you have to know your market. You have to know who your market is. Who is your target audience? And what do they need most? And the best way to do that is to ask them. Now, selling art is a little bit different than selling shoes or selling any other product, but art tends to be a little bit subjective and have individual appeal. But yet, if you were to look at the demographics, most art is purchased by people between 40 and 60 years old, and the majority between 50 and 60 years old. That tends to be where the money is. They've got money at that time. You know, their kids are starting to be out of college, and they're more interested in art than ever, and they're spending. But there are people, of course, all age groups. So 40 to 60-year-old is broad. It's a family reunion, but it still tends to be where the buying takes place. And you also want to understand, and this is not trying to be sexist in any way, most art buying is heavily influenced by women. If there's a couple and that painting is going to hang in the house, and typically, not always, that woman will maybe be the one who's in charge of decorating and may say, look, that painting's not hanging over my purple couch. So they do have influence. And of course, that's not true of all kinds of couples, but it could be true. And so get to know your audience. What I like to do is I like to understand who's buying my paintings and why they're buying my paintings. And so if I get an opportunity, for instance, if I'm at the gallery during a show, somebody buys it, I'll meet the buyers. I'll try to learn a little bit about them. Where do they live? Where are they from? What kind of business are they in? What kind of jobs do they have? What kind of homes do they live in? Do they have vacation homes? You know, those things give me clues. And then I also ask, what is it about this painting that spoke to you? And oftentimes I'll hear patterns, and people will say, well, I really like the colors. Or the one I hear a lot is it reminds me of X, Y, Z, something nostalgic usually. Oftentimes I'll hear, that reminds me of where I grew up, or that reminds me of a place we lived when I was little. So look for those kinds of things, because those might give you clues on what to paint, but also things that you can say. Because if you're in an opportunity to influence people, you can say, does that painting remind you of anything, like a place that you grew up or something like that? So use those triggers. Also look for commonalities in the people who are buying things, because that'll tell you kind of where to reach out. I've noticed lately with my paintings, I've been getting a lot of buyers who are doctors. And those doctors all happen to live in the local community where my gallery is, most of them. And so would that give me a clue as a marketing opportunity, maybe a way to reach doctors somehow, or a way to invite doctors, all the doctors in town, to an opening or something? Just kind of use your brain, and those commonalities will point out things in your marketing. The next question comes from Darla. Hey, Darla. It's kind of like saying, hey, darling. Darla in Flagstaff, Arizona. Darla says, I know I have to be productive to sell my art, but sometimes I just don't feel motivated. How can I stay focused on both painting and marketing? Well, you're probably not going to want to hear this, Darla, but there's a lot of answers to it. And I guess it really depends on what's really important to you and what's not. If it's not about a need, in other words, if selling paintings is not meaning you're going to have to pay the mortgage, it's just extra money that you're going to have, it probably isn't important to you. And So I like to think in terms of goals and priorities. Let me give you an example. I set annual goals. I have 3 top annual goals. And then I have three top goals for each month. Some of those goals relate to the top 3 goals of the year in terms of the projects that I have to do to reach those goals. And I have weekly goals. And so until my top 3 goals are met for the week, I don't leave the office. I don't push them off into the following week, because if I don't get those done, I'm never going to get anything done. So every goal relates to the top goals. Now, if I'm not working on things that don't reach my goals, it's mostly a complete waste of time. Now, there's things you have to do. You got to take out the garbage, you got to pick up the kids, you got to deal with, health issues or whatever. But I try to keep most of my time focused on those goals, because it's real easy to go, well, I should do this project, or I've got this idea. Those shiny objects will get in the way of your success. I know I'm the shiny object king. Success Magazine even said that about me. And I've had to learn to overcome that, because those shiny objects kind of get in the way of my success. And so if it's a financial thing, let's say, for instance, you have to generate, I'm going to use this number because it's easily divided. Let's say you have to survive and you have to generate $120,000 a year, or you can't survive and pay your mortgage and your bills. That has to be one of your goals. If your monthly goal will then be $12,000, right? Or $10,000 because you've got 12 months. So $10,000, and then you divide that by 4 weeks, and that's $2,500. And then you might even want to break that into a daily goal, and you just tell yourself, I'm not leaving here today till I figured out how to sell that. But it depends on how motivated you are. Daily goals keep me motivated. I know that I have to do certain things each day to survive, and that I don't leave the office till they're done. Sometimes it means a long day. I also sometimes will break my week into a plan. So I tell people, I think you ought to spend 20% of your time on marketing. So if you're working 5 days a week, then you got to spend 1 day a week on your marketing, or you got to spend so many hours a day on your marketing, and pay attention to it and force yourself to do it. And sometimes that's what it takes to be motivated. Now, there are days when I'd rather sleep in and not work. I'd rather not go to work. I'd rather play my guitar or go painting, or, just chill. But I don't do that very often, because it always puts me further behind. I think routines are critical, and no matter what, I stick to my routines. I get up every day at the same time. I get up, I feed my kids, I drive them to school, I go to the gym for an hour, I come home, I get ready for work, I meditate, I read the Bible, I do the things that I try to do every morning. And so gym is critical for me, because it raises my dopamine levels, it gets my health, keeps my health good, but also it makes me feel like working. So if I'm in a down mood, if I can get myself to the gym, or at least to take a walk, it puts dopamine into my system, makes me feel better, and that's helpful. So look for a routine. Motivation is everything. Also ask yourself, what happens if I don't do this? And let's say you don't have to make that money, but you want something. So everything can be tied to something. So let's say you're telling yourself, well, I don't have to sell paintings because my wife or my husband has a job, but I'd like to get a new car. And to be able to get a new car, I got to come up with $30,000. And to do $30,000, I got to, I want to get one in 3 months. Well, okay, so now you got to do $10,000 a month. You got to get busy, and you got to focus on that. So break everything down. Start with a big goal, break it down into little bitty pieces. There's also another trick that applies, and that is a trick that I use when I'm writing. The old adage was, if you can't think of what you're going to write, just sit down and start writing anything. It's gibberish, writing a note, writing a letter, anything. And that warms up your brain, and next thing you know, you kick in and you're able to write. Well, I think that the same would be true for anything. If you're not feeling like marketing, just force yourself to sit down and do your marketing. It'll make a major difference, because you'll eventually just kind of kick in, and then you'll kind of forget you weren't motivated. Anyway, I hope that helps. Well, this has been the Art Marketing Minute with me, Eric Rhoads. My goal in life is to eliminate the idea of the starving artist and to help your dreams actually come true. So if you want to submit questions, simply email eric@artmarketing.com. And to learn more about marketing ideas, you can visit artmarketing.com. Thanks for listening.